call this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. We've already had the pledge this morning, so I will start with the Veterans Office. Ms. Marion.
I got it. Anything for veterans?
Anything for veterans, sir?
Thank you very much. No report from veterans. There are presently having a raffle, and proceeds and donations will go to support the Veterans Memorial Wall. That's a new project that we're working on now.
Okay. You already give the raffle tickets?
Next week I'll bring them for you.
Excellent, thank you.
Appreciate it.
County Sealer, Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Chairman, I have no report, but I hear any questions.
Any questions for the County Sealer? Seeing none, thank you very much. Board elections here. Okay. District Attorney.
Good morning. I have no official report. We've been pretty busy in these last few months, and as you know, we're prepping for a homicide trial this summer, so we'll be busy again. I just wanted to take a few moments to acknowledge one of my staff members, Jamie Martineau, who's here today, an assistant district attorney. He recently became an EMT and was in Thai court the other night and was able to successfully revive and basically stabilize a defendant who was in the courtroom, who went into a type of seizure disorder and was able to use that skill and training that he recently acquired to help out another human being. So I just wanted to acknowledge Jamie, because you don't hear all the positive things that happen, and I would like just to take a moment to do that. And I have nothing further unless anybody has any questions they'd like to ask.
Anything for the District Attorney?
And I will be reminding you about our cruelty task force, animal cruelty task force report that I'm sure all of you have been reading diligently and studying, because there's a few different projects that I've been discussing with Chairman Gilliland in regards to proceeding with from the law enforcement perspective, but there's some things that I can't intercede with from your standpoint, so I was hoping that you could all take a look at that and see if there's anything that we can do with those recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
On the Animal Cruelty Task Force portion, as per the results, we'll be taking up the various recommendations of this committee. Emergency Services, Mr. Jaquish.
Good morning. The first thing I want to talk about, as you can see it on the agenda, is per diem hirees for dispatcher positions. We opened the dispatch in 2006, and essentially we still have the same people. Obviously, seniority builds benefit time. We also have 2 extended leaves coming up that were unplanned, and we also have a 3rd possibly due to an illness, which leaves us in a bind for filling vacation slots and the time off that these people require. I can tell you that we've reached over half of our overtime budget, which was $28,000. This year we're around 13 right now, but these predicted times off that are coming in September, there's planned 84 hours of overtime that's going to be incurred. October, November, 52 hours, and in December there are 44 more, and that's without the unplanned overtime that we are going to experience. So I said on the agenda that we would hire 2 per diem. A per diem employee doesn't require benefits. Basically, they only get paid when they work. The only expense will be in training them. And I want to do it now because we are upgrading our CAD system at the dispatch center, which is going to require some training before they can operate the system. We're presently installing that this week and next. The technicians from Tiburon are here putting that system in. I want to hire 4 per diem employees. And to really alleviate the whole issue, as it's going to continue as the years progress, eventually we're going to have to hire another full-time dispatcher. We presently have 11 dispatchers, 10 work shifts, 12-hour shifts. But if we don't hire some per diem and get them trained, the overtime costs are going to escalate, and we're going to come to a place where we can't fill shifts because we don't have the people to fill those shifts. We're experiencing a little distress right now. Some dispatchers are working their days off, etc. So if we could hire 4 per diem, and that would give us depth of field. I know it sounds like 2 or 4. It really isn't going to cost anymore. The only time it will cost is when you're filling the shift that's required, and it's at straight time instead of time and a half. And the real thing I'm trying to solve here is the stress on the dispatchers themselves. They do work together. They try to cover each other's shifts. I just think that it's becoming, where they start working days off, etc., that it's becoming excessive. So I'd like a resolution to at least try to hire 4. And I will remind you that in 2006, when we tried this, we did hire some per diem, part-time, but they all left within a couple weeks. So it's difficult to hire those kind of people. So we're going to look for people that are retired or for some reason or other don't need a full-time position. So I'd like to propose that resolution on the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Moreau.
I move it for discussion for 4.
Thank you. Second. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Moore. Second. Discussion. Moore?
In the original resolution, you had for 2, but I guess what you were saying to us, they only get paid when they work anyways, being per diem.
You can hire 10.
And I kind of wondered why you weren't looking for 4, because that gives you more of a pool to pull from, because when they're per diem, they may have something else planned when you ask for them.
That's correct.
So that's the reason I would support 4, to give you 4 people to pull from, even though you only need 2 at certain times.
Correct.
Mr. Lloyd?
Hey, Don, could you educate me, or maybe the rest of the board, on how that department is set up? Apparently you have your own dispatchers that you administer, and then the state police have a number of dispatchers, but you're all in the same room. How does that work?
That's co-location. Presently, they are experiencing the same woes that we have. They have a severe shortage of comp specs right now due to retirements and unplanned leaves. They're actually filling some of their slots with 1 trooper. And as you know, we're doing a co-location with them, so eventually there'll be more people moving into that. We've just installed 7 new positions for the state police. But they basically handle all state police matters. Now in a crisis, and I mean a crisis, they can step in. There's some of them are cross-trained better than others. There's 2 or 3 that can actually dispatch fire and EMS. Some are not experienced in it, not familiar with it. So we actually take their calls sometimes. Sometimes we handle theirs, sometimes they handle ours. But that's how it works, presently. Now, things are going to change when they close the other dispatch centers and bring them all there. They'll be far busier. We take around 70,000 calls last year. Of that, about 15 or 16,000 were 911 dire emergency calls, and the rest were all kinds of other calls. So it's not, sometimes you walk in the dispatch center and it seems like, wow, this is pretty calm. And other times, it's like a hurricane. So it comes in waves and cycles.
Mr. Kosovo?
How many full-time do we currently have, Don?
You have 10 that can work shift and 1 that's on days all the time.
Are they 40-hour week?
They are 12-hour weeks. They work 40-hour weeks, yes, but it's a 2-week pay period.
So the issue now is when somebody's off, you've got nobody to cover?
Right.
Is that what I'm on now?
That's exactly what's happening. And so we have to make sure, in order for that person to take the time, that we have somebody else that can fill it, and it's like a juggling act at times. And some people make sacrifices. They know their friend wants time off, so they'll work their days off to give him his time off. But it's getting to the point now where it's just not going to be doable.
It's not a time abuse issue then? It's not?
No, not at all. They're very good about time abuse. There isn't any. But you remember, these are shift workers, so they get comp time. They work holidays, they get holiday time, all that builds. It's not like a 40-hour office work schedule.
So if you were to go to the per diem, are these civil service, are these competitive positions?
No, they would be appointed.
I thought there was a test for them. Yeah, there's a test. Yeah. So how do you, so anybody that you go with per diem has to be on the list, correct?
Eventually, they will have to take a test.
That's what I thought. I don't know if there's an active list out there or not, but you can't just go hire off the street. It's a competitive.
You can provisionally.
Which we've done in the past, and then we train them and find they don't score high enough on the list, and they're done. So we got all that money into training and so on, and
I have one retired dispatcher that is very good, that I know he's expressed an interest. Even if I could get one or two right now, it would be a big help.
Is there how difficult is it, Dan, to schedule an exam?
It's a state exam, so it takes a little while to get. I mean, typically, state takes 9 months to a year to get an exam.
Right.
So you're going to have some play in there.
And it looks like this would be a wash on the overtime, obviously.
Yes, it would negate overtime. It'd be cheaper in the long run. Right now, we spent around $13,000.
I don't have an issue with the per diems. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I am concerned that we get people in there, train them, and then they don't score in the top 3, and they're done, and you got to go through it all over again. I'm just curious as maybe between now and Ways and Means we can find out how quick it is to have an examination scheduled, or if there's an active list that's out there currently.
We'll look at those things, Tom. But again, I've had this discussion with Don, and I'm honestly not sure that per diems are the answer. I would hope so, because that's the least costly for us in terms of position. Ultimately, if we're unable to get per diems to do this, we may have to look at part-time, regularly scheduled part-time individuals. That will cost you more because it does provide for some level of benefit. The benefit is based upon whatever the time schedule is. If it turns out they're part-time working 60%, then they're entitled to 60% of benefits. So clearly the part-time idea is more expensive than the per diems. However, per diems are typically less reliable. They have the ability to say, no, I'm not coming in, I've got a family event planned, I'm not available. So that's why when we run a per diem list in these kinds of situations, we typically run them larger than what we may necessarily need, because there is a process of calling through the list to find someone that's willing to come in. What happens is, if you get someone who typically calls off and says that they're not available, then you stop calling them, essentially, and look for somebody else to fill the per diem list. I think it's a good place to start. We have some long-term, he's got some people going off long-term, and I say, 6 to 8 weeks or however that is. The cost of that overtime would be pretty significant, and it would be pretty trying on the staff as it is currently set up.
Would 2 additional full-time county, would that fill the void? We've been through this with the Sheriff's Department through the years, and eventually it did save us some overtime.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but the problem with full-time is that it becomes so costly. When you start to add in all of the benefits, including the retirement, the full-time retirement, the full-time health insurance, the full-time, what also triggers in is full-time benefit levels. So now we've hired somebody who now gets vacation, sick, and personal, in which we, it is a balancing act.
You think there's a pool out there, Donnie, of people, qualified people that would do the per diem?
It's going to be difficult. I'm going to tell you, we tried it once, it didn't work. We ended up hiring another person. And if you want my honest opinion, we're going to have to hire somebody full-time, but we'll try this first.
Yeah, Don and I have had this discussion, and I really think we need to try this, because it's the least costly option.
Try the per diem, you're saying?
Yes.
For instance, Clinton County has 7 part-time dispatchers. Well, I think I talked to...
Part-time, regularly scheduled part-time, or per diems?
Part-time.
Because I think that's what Dan's saying is the difference. If you could, it might be easier to fill somebody that's regularly scheduled part-time than somebody that's on call all the time, you know?
Mr. Politi?
Well, I agree entirely with your overview, Dan. It's right on the money. But I guess what I'm concerned about is I can't remember us having this discussion last year. So I'm just curious as to why we have an issue now. We didn't have the issue last year. What has caused this scenario to occur?
Accrued benefits. They've reached a point where accrued benefits by the employees is one. Last year I did put in for a dispatcher in the budget, but it was removed during budget workshops. We removed it or whatever. So it's not a new thing. We've known it's coming, but it's reached a point now with 2 unexpected events that are going to put some pressure on it. So I want to do it before it's a crisis. Now is the time to make the correction.
This was talked, they did ask for one position, I took it out in the budget workshops. What's really driving this right now is we have some scheduled pregnancies and those things that are going to drive the train. Let's just put it out there, that's how it works.
And the
Well, yeah, I'm going to support this at this time. Maybe it won't work, but at least we're going to try it the least costly way of doing this to the taxpayers. And, you know, we've talked about these per diem positions in other departments in the past, so I will support the 4 per diems. If it doesn't work, then we're going to have to go to Plan B.
Mr. Moore?
And that's actually what I was going to say, because after Don sent the email out, I called him about it, and we talked in depth about it. And this was the most reasonable way to go for now, to try it, for, like Dan said, for our taxpayers. And if it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board.
I'd like to add one comment. I'd like to have this brought before the salary subcommittee too for the examining. I support the 4, but I'd like to take a look, kind of read, you know, I know there's some prior 2009, post-2009 employee issues.
Yes.
And I also like to know how much, you know, take a look at how big a pool we've got out there as well. So if we could schedule that, I'd appreciate it. Any more discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Okay, the next thing I have is I need a resolution to apply for and accept Unified Hazard Mitigation Grant. You see there's an attachment in the agenda. Basically, we have to rewrite our hazard mitigation plan every 3 years. The hazard mitigation plan is what enables towns and villages to apply for flood mitigation assistance and pre-disaster mitigation funds from FEMA. And that plan has to be in place, and it has to be rewritten. This grant will cover 75% of the rewrite cost, and 25% can be done in in-kind services.
Mr. Moore? Moved. Second by Mr. Grinnell. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Jacobs?
Yes, I have one more thing, I'm sorry. We have an issue at Angel Hill, which is one of the 11 transmitter sites that we maintain. That issue is that the electrical system, the uninterruptible power supply that we have installed at that location, which is necessary to keep our microwave and LMR system up and running, when the utility quits and it switches to generator, the UPS senses dirty power off the generator and won't switch back to utility. So basically what happens is you have a storm, it takes NICEAG offline, the generator starts, powers up the place, it's running fine, the power comes back on, the generator says, hey, the power's on, it shuts off. Well, what happens, the UPS looks at it and says, hey, I'm not switching back over. The power's dirty, I'm not switching over, and it stays on battery until it dies. So the two solutions that we have for this, and I'm just giving you a heads up because I don't know exact costs, but I have approximate costs. It'll be part of the radio project, but we have to either install a battery rectifier bank or a filter system or our own generator. That's the company that owns the site said it's not our problem, and it really isn't. The interference is being caused by two co-locators whose power supplies alternate back and forth constantly, which causes a bump in the system, and I don't think you can really filter it out. I would recommend the battery rectifier, which is about $29,000, or installing another generator, which would probably be just as expensive.
Is that a big load up there? I mean, what's the load when the generator picks the load up?
I think they said they needed a 20 kW to power our share of it, and that was the owners, they did look into it, they spent some of their own money, and they basically said, you know what, you guys put your own generator in. We're not going to pressure the other tenants here to filter their power, so it's your problem.
20 kW just for our load?
Yeah, roughly, I think. It could be a little less.
Wow.
15 to 20, but I'm waiting for a sizing on the battery rectifier bank.
Who we had up there looking at the issue?
Oh, we've had Mountain Lake, let's see, not Mountain Lakes, Motorola. They brought in their own people, and so has the site owner has brought in their own people.
So it runs fine on generator power. When you go back online, the generator continues to operate. It won't.
No, the generator will shut down.
The generator shuts down.
But the UPS is seeing, on the utility side, if you look at the sine wave, you know how they're perfect. Yeah. Well, you'll see the interference very graphically on the sine wave. We've put recording oscilloscopes on there, and it's very dirty because of these switching power supplies, which the other tenants can tolerate, but we can't.
I mean, we can put, you can get a 20 kW generator for a lot less than $6,000.
Now, that's what I don't know, Tom.
I think that's something that we could do in-house.
You know,
That's not a...
We'll have to pour a pad, I'm sure, you know, and put his fence up and do the wiring. You might be right. You might be
Dave
very right.
has the capability of really doing that. It's just something to look into. I mean,
I'm just putting this out.
It's not going to, the equipment's going to be maybe $6-8 grand, but I mean, your cost is going to be the labor doing it. And you got the talent right in house that could do that.
I would hope so, but that doesn't always work.
I guess my question would be, if we did put a generator in there, you had a switch over, would someone each time have to physically go up to shut the generator off?
No, it's all automatic.
Then why would the UPS then recognize the ability for the...
Because that would be clean power. It would sense clean power of the generator.
But I mean, when the generator goes off?
When the generator goes off, the UPS should switch over to utility. It's not doing it now because when the generator's online, it's telling UPS that the power is dirty, and UPS maintains that memory and won't switch back over.
So a new generator would signal the UPS that it's actually clean?
Yes. Yeah, the engineers have all studied this, and those were the three options. A generator, try to filter out the bumps, or put a bridge rectifier and a battery bank in.
Okay, thank you. I would agree with Tom that I think the generator, if that's going to, with a switch back, be successful, it would be a lot less.
If in fact it's the generator causing the problem, because the generator does shut down, line power comes back on, whatever is...
Yep. They have looked at this repetitively. Many minds have looked at it, and they are, you know, quite certain that it's when the generator's online, they're picking up these bad waveforms, and the UPS won't allow it to switch back over to utility. It's an Eaton UPS. It's quite sophisticated. We first blamed them, and they sent their people up and proved that it wasn't.
So you'll be able to bring in some cost estimates and options?
Okay. I don't want to just spring it on you. I want you to understand what's going on before we get into it.
You did pretty good springing stuff today.
Anything else for emergency services? Thank you.
Thank you.
Notice that the Board of Elections is here.
Chairman, I apologize for the delays. I had to request supervisors that this week on the Board of Elections, we took 150 local petitions. They have all been reviewed and the election period and
Excuse me. Can I ask you to come to the podium so we can get it on the record? Thank you.
Thank you. Just to repeat what I had just said, over at the Board of Elections, we took in 115 local petitions this past week. They have all been reviewed. We are currently in the objection period and circulation for independent petitions. We don't have any requests to make right now. We are going to have a number of primaries this fall, but we've already budgeted for them. So I have nothing to request of you supervisors, but if you have any questions.
Any questions for Board of Elections? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheriff's Office, the sheriff has been excused today, so we'll hear from that. I'd like to go next to Public Defender, please.
Good morning, everyone. Some really exciting policy type news, but on the issue of eligibility for assigned counsels, pursuant to the settlement with the state, with the Harrell Herring litigation, the state is supposed to come up with uniform standards for when a person's eligible for an assigned attorney. So part of that process involves public hearings, and the state's doing, I guess, a traveling road show. They're going to each of the judicial districts, including our judicial district, which is the 4th. So they're actually conducting the hearing next door here on August 26th at 11 a.m. I sent a copy of the notice to Mr. Palmer and the clerk of the board to circulate around. They are taking public comment, written, or also requests for to provide testimony, but if anyone has any strong feelings one way or another about eligibility standards, I guess now is the time to speak or forever hold your peace. But by this fall or early next year, the state is supposed to have in place some uniform across the state rules or eligibility guidelines. They've already kind of indicated some of the factors they're considering, including these standards, and they're all things that we have been abiding by since we've been created in 2004. So I anticipate no major changes, no major increases of cases, no major decreases of cases, probably just a status quo. But other than that, no questions. And
any questions for Public Defender? Being none, thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate that. Next, probation, Julie. Yes, I do, Julie. Could you come to the podium, please? Thank you. What I'd like to bring up is everybody had their boxes, copies of the confidential interim report of the salary subcommittee. I hope everybody had a quick chance to take a look at that. I talked to the board chairman, and he would like to move forward with one of the recommendations, which is the most urgent recommendation of the salary subcommittee, which is on page 2 of the report. probation department, and the committee feels that this particular department is in the greatest amount of crisis, and they have almost pretty much on the precipice of becoming, unable to sustain staffing and promotion so that we can push, have a sustainable promotion process up to the heads and stuff. Losing tremendous numbers, or we're losing a lot of officers to state parole. There is, from my assessment, there is good morale in probation department, but if we don't do something very quickly to stem the tide of people leaving, we're going to be without a probation department. And so I'd like to put forward two resolutions, which are A and B of the subcommittee recommendation. A, which is we convert the probation department from a 37.5-hour week to a 40-hour week. And the second one was to redesignate all the probation officer titles to the next hire in the series. I would like to put those two forward as resolutions. So I open it up for discussion. I'd ask Julie to come here to answer, and also Dan for any of it. The first part, which is the 40-hour per week department, would be an increase of $27,259 on a yearly basis. And the second one would be about approximate yearly increase of $15,335. But this department, so far, the subcommittee has found it to be in the most critical need of change. So I put it forward for discussion.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it is a motion.
Is there a second?
Perhaps, Mr. Grinnell, thank you. Discussion? Mr. Scott?
Those are total costs for the entire department, I'm assuming, correct?
27 and 15, so...
And then the 15,335, that's how many probation officers are being promoted? I mean, change, I shouldn't say promoted, this is grade change.
And then the probation series, how many do they have? Nine.
And that only amounts to 15,000?
You're raising them one grade step.
Okay, so you're budgeting from this point forward, that's not per year then? Be for like a half a year?
I'll have to look at my numbers now, but is there not? There's really, I don't think there was. I did count the supervising probation officers. Probation officers,
The number don't seem right.
I'll check the number, Tom.
Yeah, that number...
That's all I can do.
That number seems low.
What, we talking about budget year? For next year?
No, starting this year. We're starting right now.
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
So,
Yeah.
This is the only recommendation that's come forward so far that we feel, that the committee feels it needs immediate rectification.
I guess my question is for you, Dan. Where's the money?
Well, there's some additional money within the department itself, so we will run that. How much extra did you have in there anticipating Terry's retirement? There was, I think, 15,000 or something was in there. I'm not sure. But what we will do is we'll run it out until as far as we can, and then see what we need. The rest would have to come out either contingent or fund balance for the rest of the year.
Well, this has been an issue even with the budget subcommittee. This was one of the issues that we addressed a need for. So, but I'm only concerned about the money.
Yeah, clearly, I think I can run it down to probably October or something, and then see where I am from there, and we'll either have to take it out of fund balance or out of contingent.
Thank you.
Mr. Glaze?
Hey, Julie, what's the average caseload for your probation office?
It isn't really an average because built into the caseloads, it's not just the adults that are supervised. I think in Ticonderoga right now, it's just probably 90 adults, but the POs all do a variety because we work geographically, so some POs have adults, they write court-ordered reports, and they work with juveniles.
Okay, I guess where I was trying to go with this, is this a short-term fix, or are we going to need to hire more probation officers in the future?
Well, I think that depends on what the caseloads do. At this time, we're not seeking to hire a new probation officer, an additional person.
Mr. Connell?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize, please.
Go ahead.
Are these figures strictly salary, or are they salary and benefit?
They were salary and benefit. Linda ran the numbers, so I'll have to talk to Linda after, but I'll confirm the numbers before Ways and Means.
Thank you.
Ms. Morrow?
These are for the parole officers, but what about the director? Do they bring the officers up close to the directors? Because probably 10, 12 years ago, we had a problem in the sheriff's department, because we had the officers making as much as a supervisory staff, if not more, or close to it. So how does this compare with the director's salary?
It did not change the director's.
Did not, but it didn't bring them close enough that we have to change it?
Well, we'll look at that. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I worry about that, when you got somebody you're supervising making pretty near as much as the people you're, not supervising, whatever.
Any other questions? One of the other issues that may come up in United States is the youth incarceration change that may be happening from the state, and this is what's going to throw a whole new workload on probation. Is that correct, Julie?
Yes, at that time, if raise the age ever does pass, then we would need more staff.
Any other questions, comments?
And one of the things that is the issue, not only in terms of whether you want to, the way the salaries are currently set up, you would have trouble recruiting in order to get additional staff. So the first step is you have to address the salaries themselves, and then once you get the salaries up to a more reasonable level to compete with the other counties in the state, then you can look at whether you need to recruit on top of that. And again, the raise the age will make a difference in that. I mean, literally, we've had probation officers leave to take secretarial jobs that were paying higher than the probation officer's position. So it's clearly a issue of salary being too low for the positions that we've got.
No other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you very much. Anything else for probation? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before this committee?